Myself, I grew up on a farm, a beef farm in Missouri, about 80 miles west of St. Louis. And like everybody else that raises livestock, we raise a lot of our own feed, corn and soybeans and hay. And we grind this up into a flour, and we'd add vitamins and minerals and trace minerals to this. We'd make pellets or cake out of it and feed those calves for about 6 to 9 months before we'd ship them off to be butchered. Save back the very best ones for our own family, of course. And the thing that fascinated me as a teenager was the fact that we ate out of those very same fields. We had a garden at the end of the field where we grew peas and beans and squash and peppers and whatnot. We also saved back 5 rows of corn for the family, and we wanted to live to be 100 with no aches and pains, and we didn't do the same thing for ourselves that we did for those calves. And as a teenager, this was very fascinating for me. And I always used to ask my dad, I'd say, hey, Pops, how come we go to all that trouble for those calves? We grind up their feed, add vitamins and minerals and trace minerals, and feed them for 6 to 9 months, knock them in the head and eat them. And we, out of those very same fields, don't do that for ourselves. And of course, being a Missouri farmer, he'd give me a lot of Missouri farm wisdom. He'd say things like, shut up, boy. If you're getting farm fresh food, fresh air, free exercise, don't ask complicated questions. So I was glad when I got rid of that farm exercise and went to the University of Missouri and got into ag school. My major was in animal husbandry and nutrition. My minor was in field crops and soils. But I really didn't get an answer to my basic question until I became a freshman veterinary student at the University of Missouri. And as a freshman veterinary student, what I learned was the reason we put vitamins and minerals and trace minerals into animal feeds is because we don't have insurance for them. We don't have Blue Cross, Blue Shield, major medical hospitalization. We don't have Medicare, Medicaid, or a Hillary to watch out for them. And as a result, if we were to use a human healthcare type of system for livestock, it'd be a real sticker shock for most people. Because of the veterinary care, the hamburger would cost $275 a pound, and boneless, skinless chicken breasts would be $450 a pound. So to keep things on an even keel where everybody could get at this meat, we learned that we could prevent and cure diseases with nutrition. Now, after graduating vet school, I got diverted for a couple of years and went to Africa and worked with Marlin Perkins from the old Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom days. And that was a lot of fun. You know, people always ask you when you're a veterinarian, are you a large animal vet or a small animal vet? Well, I was an extra large animal vet because I worked with elephants and rhinos and things like that for a couple of years. Got to be Frank Buck, used a tranquilizer gun and got to move animals all across Africa and to Europe and the United States. In fact, many of the African elephants and rhinos that you see in wild animal parks and zoos are ones that I either caught or offsprings of one that I caught. Now, after 2 years of doing that, Marlin sent me a telegram and invited me back to the States to work on a big project. The National Institutes of Health had given him $7.5 million to study pollution in the mid-'60s. This is when we first recognized that there was pollution in our air and our water and our food, and nobody quite knew what that meant over a long period of time. And so we had many, many projects going on in the mid-'60s, but one of them, the one that I was working on, was one where I had to do autopsies of animals that died of natural causes in the big zoos around the United States. And I was to look for a species of animals that was ultra-sensitive to pollution. And we were going to use that species of animals much like the old coal miners used to use a canary. You know, they take the canary down the mine, and the canary would act as an early warning system. If methane gas or carbon monoxide would leak out into the mine, the canary would drop off the perch and die long before the men were in danger. We're going to take these animals and put them in little strategic spots all around the world and pay attention to them, and if they started dying, we knew we were in danger. Well, to make a long story short, after some 12 years working at the St. Louis Zoo and the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, the Bronx Zoo in New York, the National Zoo in D.C., the L.A. Zoo, and many other big ones throughout the United States, I'd done some 17,500 autopsies in over 454 species of animals, plus 3,000 human beings who lived in close proximity to the zoos for a comparison. And what I learned was pretty frightening. Every one of those animals and every one of the people who died of natural causes died of a nutritional deficiency disease. And that got me very excited, and I wrote, as Dr. Dunlap said, I wrote 75 scientific papers, 8 textbooks about that big. You have to pay $140 for those textbooks. I'm not sure that the medical students ever read them, but they had to buy them to pass the course. It was one of those kind of things. So I was on 2020 with Hugh Downs and Geraldo before he got his nose broken, was on every network TV. Back then it was only 3 networks, 1,700 newspapers, lectured all across the United States back in the late 60s and early 70s, just like I'm doing now. And I couldn't get anybody excited about those findings because we had just put men on the moon. We had a high-tech Cold War going on with the Soviets, and we had just committed $23 billion with a B, $23 billion, which is a lot of money back then, to finding cures and vaccines for cancer. And so talking about nutritional deficiency diseases 35 years ago in America was pretty low on everybody's totem pole. But I knew it was important, so I got frustrated enough. I went back to school for 4 years up in Portland, Oregon, became a physician, and I practiced for 12 years in a general family practice, took care of chainsaw wounds, delivered babies, looked at hemorrhoids, all the fun things of life. And I was always very honest with my patients. I always put my veterinary degree on the wall along with the medical degree. And of course, the new patients, for some reason, they'd always focus in on that veterinary degree. And they say, Doc, I'm here for a physical. Am I in the right place? Looks like a vet's office. And if I saw that they were from the farm, I always kept one of these full-length obstetrical gloves they used for AI and examining mares and cows. I put that on, and they'd backstroke out of the office because they knew what that was for. And the nurses would have to chase them down and say, Doc, don't terrorize the patients like that. But the most fun I had, of course, was using everything I'd learned in veterinary nutrition on my human patients. And it was no great surprise to me that it just worked like a charm. And what I'm going to do tonight is share with you a lot of what I learned. And if you take home just 10% of what I share with you, you're going to save yourself an enormous amount of unnecessary misery. You're going to save yourselves a gob of money, and you're going to add many, many healthful years to your life. There's no extra charge if you want to take home 50% or 100%, but I'll feel good and sleep well tonight if you just take home 10%. Well, let's get started. And to do that, I'm going to tell you that the human being has the genetic capacity, the capability of living healthfully to be 120 to 140, and I'm going to prove that to you in a second. There's no doubt about it. Unfortunately, Americans don't do a very good job when it comes to this.